This is Doug McIntyre, one of the editors at Climate Crisis 247, and I am joined from the West Coast by Dave Calloway, who is another one of the editors at Climate Crisis 247. And we're going to talk a little bit about the relationship between EVs and gasoline prices. And I'm reminded of something. I'm old enough to remember this. The Arab oil embargo and the period after that, when it was hard to get oil from the Middle East, drove gas prices to the point where people started to consider buying Japanese cars. Before that, people would not even look at them. But because they got great mileage, there was a migration from these big boats that the American car companies made. People found out they liked them. And now 32% of the US market is Japanese branded cars. So, Dave, $5 gas is very possible right now with the geopolitical problems. If we hit that level and stay near there, does it help the EV guys?
Well, I think where we are now, Doug, is a lot different than the oil embargo, oil shock days of the early 70s. For instance, in California, we've been paying $5 gas for years. It's only in the rest of the country that it's cheaper. If it gets to five in Connecticut and New Jersey, it's 8 in California. So, I think to that extent, it does start to move the needle. Oil above $100 a barrel can start to move the needle. I mean, we saw a nice pickup in EV sales a few years ago when oil was particularly high after Russia invaded Ukraine. I don't know if it really is a game changer. I mean, look, the people who own EVs now, folks I know out here who have Teslas and whatever, the other Rivians and stuff, they love that they are not paying gas prices, and they gloat that they're not paying gas prices, and they go to the mall and they will charge up for free and blah blah blah, and their charging at home is not that expensive. So there is an element of getting away with something if you're an EV owner, and so I think it does. The higher the gas prices go, the more people will consider it. But what we've seen and what we've talked about here on this podcast in the last few months is that more and more people are trying the hybrid route instead, right? They want an EV, but they're a little too nervous about the charging situation, the cost, the battery, and so they're going hybrid. So I think, if oil continues to rise, we see another shock out of the Middle East for whatever reason, get above 100, we will see a move in the needle towards electric, but it'll probably be in favor of hybrids to start.
Now, does California have the highest penetration of EVs now? I'm not trying to draw a direct distinction between $5 gas and that, but do you all have the highest penetration of EV ownership among car owners?
Yeah, I think nationwide it's a little less than 8%, 7.8 or something like that. In California, it's about 25. It's up. Yeah, it's a big deal here, and the second largest state, I believe, is Texas, which is openly hostile to EVs, and yet a very friendly state in terms of renewable energy. So it's two states. You don't see any EVs in Middle America, and you see some in New York City and maybe in Washington, on the coasts and in the suburbs of the big cities, but generally not once you get into the rural areas. So it's still a big challenge.
Well, in some ways, the argument that it's not just gas prices is the fact that Texas usually has, among 4 or 5 states with the lowest gas prices all the time, for 2 reasons. One, they're close to the massive refineries that are south of Houston, so there's a supply. And the other one is that Texas is one of these states where they've said, we're not going to have a gas tax here more than, a few cents. Whereas in California, I think you have the highest gas taxes of any state.
Absolutely. Which is a shame, because we're close to the refineries too. They're right here, but the taxes wipe out that proximity benefit.
So if oil prices go up I don't know, let's say that gas goes to $5. Who are the winners? Tesla is not a winner there. It's just they don't have a hybrid car, and I don't think Musk would. He would never admit that hybrids will win, so he's never going to go down that road. Who wins in a heavy hybrid sales world?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the day Tesla goes hybrid is the day that Tesla is done forever. So, who wins? The current hybrid makers, some of the Japanese, Honda, Toyota, they're betting big. Toyota in particular is betting big on hybrids. Some of our U.S. companies that were so gung-ho on EVs a couple of years ago, GM, Ford, Stellantis, are moving more towards hybrids. So I think, any of the realistic big 6 or 8 hybrid makers will start to see more action there.
Well, if you think about it for a second, one of the things that's happened is that gas-powered cars are now suddenly people say, well, I'm going to just get a gas-powered car, which means that it may be that $5 gas does not make a huge dent in people who drive fossil fuel cars. They've become popular now because it occurs to people that they're convenient. So if you said to me, well, $4 gas, $5 gas, I'd say, well, at least I can find a gas station.
Right. And that conveniency factor is the stumbling block for the EV revolution. There's just not enough charging stations. It's pretty easy to find a charging station if you're in a EV. If you're in a Tesla, you just punch your screen and it shows you all the ones that are around you. But that's in California, right? That's not in Indiana and Illinois, where it's hard to find charging stations. I read there was a Washington Post article just earlier this week that said was talking about the President Biden's infrastructure plan, which was announced a great fanfare 3 years ago. Yeah. They're going to build 500,000 charging stations. According to this article, 3 years later, only 38 have been built. So, and it's not that the investment isn't there. It's just that it's taken, for whatever reason, too long to build them. So, that's, if you want to know why the EV sales revolution has slowed down, it's because the charging stations aren't keeping pace.
Well, since our interest is primarily the finances and economics of climate change, one of the interesting things is that what the Biden administration did not do, Tesla to some extent did do. And you've got these companies like Ford that are surrendering to Tesla when it comes to charging stations. And that is a new line of business for Tesla, making money by charging companies like Ford to have access to their charging station business. So in some ways, Musk looks like an infrastructure genius.
Yeah, that's something that should play out if EVs continue to run. The sales have slumped, but they will come back. Interest rates will fall. They'll start coming out with cheaper cars with lighter batteries, better infrastructure, and that's when Tesla's is going to look. Musk is going to look quite prescient. I think the last numbers I saw was that Tesla, it's about 150,000 charging stations in the U.S. and Tesla has 60% of them, something like that. So, that if they're going to own that, that's a big back end business for them.
It is. Well, look, there's probably going to be more trouble in the Middle East. I've noticed that the Ukrainians are now using drones to blow up Russia's oil infrastructure. So the chances that we're going to see a spike in oil for one reason or another are probably pretty good. So we'll be back sometime in the next few weeks and see if oil does hit $100, and we'll revisit this. So thanks, and I'll see you in a few weeks when we talk about maybe $5 gas.
Sounds good.